was just another school day, until Ariel Manning, a 17-year-old from Roosevelt High, witnessed something that would change her life forever. A classmate was being shoved into a fence by a cop, and when Ariel stepped in to stop it, she was arrested. But what Donnelly didn't know was that Ariel wasn't just any teenager. She was about to take down a corrupt system, all on her own. Stay tuned to see how she defied the odds. Don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories of courage and justice. Ariel had never been the type to seek attention, and certainly not in the way that day would make her the center of it. She had just been minding her own business, listening to music while scrolling through her phone, when she heard the shouting. It wasn't a fight between students. This was different. It was louder, harsher. Her instincts kicked in. A crowd had gathered at the corner of South 13th Avenue and West Adams Street. She hesitated for only a moment before slipping her phone into her pocket and walking towards the noise. What she saw made her blood run cold. D'Angelo Ruiz, a classmate known for his boisterous nature but harmless demeanor, was pressed face first against a metal fence. The school security guard, who had no business handling this situation, was shouting at him, pinning his body down. But it wasn't just the security guard who was in the mix. It was Officer Rick Donnelly, the cop with a reputation for handling students like they were criminals, not kids. Ariel froze. The sight of D'Angelo, helpless and frightened, stirred something deep within her. It wasn't just injustice she was seeing, it was something far worse. She had seen Donnelly before. His presence in their neighborhood had always been like a shadow, always hovering over the kids, always ready to enforce his authority with a force that didn't seem earned but imposed. "Hey!" Ariel's voice cut through the murmur of the crowd. "What are you doing to him?" Officer Donnelly didn't even look at her, his attention fixed solely on the student pinned under his grip. "Back off, kid," he snarled. But his voice was thick with the authority of a man who knew the power he wielded over those too scared to stand up to him. But Ariel didn't back off. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her voice was steady. "You can't treat him like this. He's not a criminal," she shouted, stepping closer, her eyes fixed on Donnelly's hand, which was gripping D'Angelo's arm too tightly. The officer's eyes finally flicked to hers, a smirk playing at the corner of his lips. "What's your problem? You want to interfere with an officer doing his job?" His words were dripping with contempt. "You don't even know what's going on here." Ariel didn't flinch. She stood her ground, though her hands trembled. At her sides, "I know it's not right to use force on someone like that. You didn't even ask him what happened." The crowd grew silent. It was almost as if everyone was holding their breath, waiting for the next move. And then, it happened. Don't let it escalate. Don't let it escalate, she thought to herself, trying to steady her breath. But then the officer took a step toward her, his chest puffing out, a warning in his eyes. "You want to get involved, huh? Fine. Let's see how that works out for you." Before she could react, Donnelly shoved her back, hard. Ariel stumbled, her feet slipping on the pavement. Her body collided with the side of the patrol car, the harsh metal biting into her skin. She gasped, the wind knocked out of her. She tried to stand. But he grabbed her arms, twisting them behind her back with enough force to make her wince in pain. "You're under arrest," he muttered, the words cold and mechanical. "Obstruction of justice." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. "What?" Ariel gasped, confusion and anger flooding her chest. "I'm not—" But she was cut off as he yanked her wrist up, securing the cuffs tightly around her wrists. The cold metal dug into her skin as she was shoved toward the back of the patrol car, her body jerking with each step. The crowd remained silent, stunned by the turn of events. Someone whispered in the background. A few students had pulled out their phones, recording the scene. But it didn't matter. Ariel's mind raced. She had just tried to protect someone, to stand up for what was right, and now she was being arrested. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Her chest tightened, her breath shallow. But as the officer opened the door to the patrol car and shoved her inside, something clicked in. Her mind. This wasn't just about D'Angelo. This wasn't just about an unfair arrest. This was about something bigger. something she hadn't realized until that very moment. The door slammed shut behind her, cutting off the rest of the world. The sound echoed in her ears, and for a moment, everything went silent. But then a thought struck her with such force. It almost knocked the air from her lungs. I'm not going to let this slide. The police station was quiet when they arrived, but the stillness felt suffocating. Ariel sat in the holding area, staring at the cold, concrete walls. Her mind whirled with thoughts of how everything had gone wrong so fast. Her mom would be worried. She would be devastated. But Ariel couldn't bring herself to feel sorry for herself. Not now. Not when she knew what she had to do next. I can't let them get away with this, Ariel whispered to herself. I won't. It was then that the full weight of what she had just done hit her. She wasn't just a student trying to help a friend. She had just stepped into a world that didn't care about her, about D'Angelo, or about what was right. She had just walked into a battle that would take everything she had, but Ariel wasn't afraid. She had a mission now, and when she got out of this, the world would know her name. This moment was the spark that would set Ariel on a path she never imagined. She was no longer just a teenager in the wrong place at the wrong time. She was someone who would fight for the truth, no matter the cost. And this was only the beginning. Ariel's mother, Patrice Manning, had just finished a double shift at the VA hospital when she received the call. Her hand trembled slightly as she gripped her phone, the voice on the other end barely audible over the hospital's hustle and bustle. Your daughter's been arrested. She's at the precinct. Patrice's heart stopped for a moment. The words didn't make sense. Ariel? Arrested? For what? Her daughter, the one who never caused trouble, never raised her voice at anyone. This had to be a mistake. She hung up and rushed out the door, her feet pounding against the pavement as she ran to her car. Every second felt like an eternity. What had happened? Why hadn't anyone told her what Ariel had done? The drive to the police station was a blur. Her mind was spinning with a million thoughts, each one darker than the last. What if Ariel was hurt? What if they were treating her like they treated every other kid from the neighborhood, like a criminal, not a teenager with dreams, with a future? When Patrice arrived, she rushed inside, barely stopping to sign in before making her way toward the holding area. She could hear the distant murmurs of officers talking, but her focus was on finding her daughter. She pushed through the door to the holding cells, her heart in her throat, and then she saw Ariel. Her daughter was sitting with her hands cuffed, her head bowed, her glasses slightly askew as if she'd just been thrown into the chaos of the world. Patrice's breath caught in her chest. Ariel looked so small, so fragile in that moment, her usual calm composure replaced by something that Patrice couldn't place. The room was cold, sterile, and everything about it made Ariel look out of place. But it wasn't just the harsh surroundings that unsettled Patrice. It was the fire she saw in her daughter's eyes, the one thing that had never been there before. Ari. Patrice's voice cracked as she walked toward her. What happened? Why? Ariel didn't look up immediately. She simply sat there, her posture rigid, her gaze fixed straight ahead. It was like she was trying to shut everything out, even her. Mother? But Patrice wasn't about to let her shut her out. You have to tell me, Patrice said again, her voice softer now, filled with worry. What happened, baby? Finally, Ariel met her mother's gaze. There was something in those eyes, something fierce and determined that Patrice had never seen before. It wasn't fear. It wasn't shame. It was a resolve. Like Ariel had made up her mind and nothing in the world could change it. They arrested me, Ariel said quietly, for standing up for someone, for trying to stop Officer Donnelly from hurting D'Angelo. Patrice's breath caught in her throat. She wasn't sure whether to be angry, scared, or proud. Ariel, her quiet, studious daughter, had just stood up to an officer. The officer who everyone knew was rough with the kids in the neighborhood. Patrice had heard the stories, had seen the tension in their community, but never in her wildest dreams had she imagined Ariel would become part of that story. Sweetheart, what do you mean? Why didn't you just walk away? Patrice asked, a mother's instinct kicking in, her concern thick in her voice. You didn't have to get involved. But Ariel's eyes hardened. and her jaw set with a quiet tensity. I couldn't just watch. Not when I saw how he treated D'Angelo, not when I knew he was wrong. He doesn't get to do that to people, to me, to anyone. Patrice's mind raced. She couldn't understand how everything had gone from normal to this in such a short time. She was just a mother, trying to do her best, working hard every day to give Ariel a better life. And now, her daughter had done something so bold, so brave but so reckless. The weight of it crushed Patrice's chest. She didn't know how to help Ariel, didn't know how to fix this. The thought of Ariel sitting in that cold, dimly lit room, cuffed and alone, broke Patrice's heart. "Ari," she whispered, sitting down beside her. "You're just a kid. You shouldn't have to fight these battles. You shouldn't have to deal with this." But Ariel shook her head, her eyes still fixed on the floor in front of her. "But I did, Mom. And I'm not going to let them get away with it." The words hit Patrice like a ton of bricks. Ariel had always been the quiet one, the smart one who played by the rules, did her homework, kept to herself. To hear her speak like this, to hear the fire in her voice, terrified Patrice, because deep down she knew this wasn't just about Ariel standing up to a cop. This was about something bigger, about injustice, about a world that had always been tilted against people like them, against her, against D'Angelo, against kids who grew up in the wrong side of town. Patrice's hands shook as she reached out to hold Ariel's. She could feel the weight of her daughter's resolve, but it didn't make her feel better. It made her feel helpless. "Ari, this isn't something we can win," Patrice said softly, her voice breaking. "This is bigger than us. They have the power, the system." Ariel finally looked up at her mother, her eyes filled with a quiet, unwavering certainty. "I don't care. They don't scare me. I'm not backing down, Mom, not now." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Patrice simply held Ariel's hand, her heart torn between fear for her daughter's safety and pride in the girl she had raised. This wasn't how she'd imagined her daughter growing up. But as she looked at Ariel, so resolute, so strong, Patrice realized something she hadn't seen before. Ariel was no longer just her little girl. She was becoming someone who could change the world. The tension between mother and daughter was palpable, but it was also a pivotal moment. Patrice could see the path Ariel was about to take, a path that would take her far beyond the confines of their small neighborhood. And though it scared Patrice more than anything in the world, she knew one thing for sure. Ariel wasn't asking for permission. She wasn't waiting for validation. She had already chosen her fight, and there was no turning back. The sound of Ariel's binder snapping open echoed through the small, dimly lit room she called her study area. It wasn't much. A desk by the window, a chair that creaked when she sat, and piles of textbooks and legal articles stacked haphazardly around her. But to Ariel, this was her sanctuary, the place where she could process the chaos around her, the place where her resolve solidified into something unbreakable. She was no longer the same person who had been arrested by Officer Donnelly. Something had changed. The fear had faded, replaced by a quiet determination. She was going to take down a system that had crushed D'Angelo and countless others before him. She needed to become something more than a teenager who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. She needed to be a fighter. And she needed to know the law. Every night since the arrest, Ariel had immersed herself in the legal world. Her phone was filled with bookmarked pages, her computer screen was constantly running through court videos, and her room was littered with printouts of statutes and legal briefs. The police report from the incident lay on her desk, highlighted in neon colors, yellow for key terms, red for contradictions, and blue for anything that didn't sit right with her. She wasn't just reading anymore. She was memorizing the language of justice, learning how to speak it, how to use it to her advantage. "If you want to be heard," she reminded herself, echoing the words her aunt had once told her, "learn their language." But no amount of legal theory could prepare her for the emotions bubbling just beneath the surface. Every time she read through the police report or watched the footage again, something inside her tightened. She could see it, the exact moment Officer Donnelly had shoved her against the patrol car. his hand twisting her arms as he placed the cuffs around her wrists. She could hear his mocking voice telling her to learn the consequences. And every time she watched it, she could feel the anger bubbling up in her chest. She had always been calm, collected. That's how she handled things. But now it was different. She wasn't just a student trying to keep her grades up and make her mom proud. She wasn't just a daughter caught in the middle of a system that didn't care about her. She was someone with a purpose, with a reason to stand up and fight for what was right. And nothing, not Officer Donnelly, not the fear of failure, not the looming threat of the system she was up against, could stop her now. Her phone buzzed, breaking her concentration. She picked it up and saw the text from her history teacher. "Mr. Kirkwood, are you still planning on defending yourself in court? I'm proud of you, Ariel. You've got this." The message sent a chill down her spine. Mr. Kirkwood had been one of the few teachers to show genuine concern, to check in on her after the arrest. He knew the pressure she was under. He knew that standing up to a police officer was no small thing. And yet there he was, offering her encouragement when everyone else might have told her to back down. It meant more than she could express. She hadn't realized it before, but she wasn't alone in this fight. She had people in her corner, people who believed in her, even if they didn't fully understand what she was up against. With a deep breath, Ariel returned to her binder, turning the pages with a steady hand. She had a plan now. She would focus on the facts, the video footage, and the inconsistencies in Donnelly's report. She would show them the truth, not through anger, but through facts, through calm precision. She would prove that justice wasn't a game of power or intimidation. It was about truth, and she had it on her side. The following days felt like a blur. Ariel didn't sleep much. There was always more to study, more to learn, more to prepare. Her mother, though quiet about the whole situation, noticed the change in her. Ariel's calm demeanor had been replaced with a quiet intensity. Even when Patrice tried to talk to her, tried to offer comfort, Ariel seemed distant, her mind always elsewhere, always focused on the trial. One evening, Patrice pulled her aside as Ariel was sitting at the kitchen table, flipping through a legal codebook. "Ari, honey, you've been working so hard, but I need you to understand something." Ariel looked up, her face softening just a little. "What?" "You don't have to do this alone. You don't have to fight this on your own," Patrice said, her voice filled with a mixture of fear and tenderness. "I know you want to show them. I know you want to show that man, but you're just a kid. You shouldn't have to go through this. You can't take on the whole world." But Ariel shook her head, the familiar spark in her eyes returning. "I can do this, Mom, and I will do this. Not for me, but for D'Angelo. For everyone who's been pushed down and silenced. This is bigger than me." Patrice could see the conviction in her daughter's face. She knew Ariel wasn't going to back down. But she also knew the road ahead would be dangerous, emotionally taxing, and possibly even damaging. "Just promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you won't let them break you." Ariel's eyes softened, just for a moment. "I won't. Mom, I promise." It wasn't long before Ariel was standing outside the courthouse, the morning sun casting long shadows across the steps. Her heart thudded in her chest, but she pushed the anxiety away. This was it. This was the moment that would define her. She wasn't just walking into a courtroom to fight for her freedom. She was walking in to fight for justice, for the truth, and no matter what happened, she would not let them take that away from her. As she stepped inside the courtroom, her mind raced through everything she had prepared. She could almost hear Officer Donnelly's voice in her head, mocking her, belittling her. But Ariel wasn't afraid. She knew that the truth would speak louder than any words he could say. Her fingers clenched around her binder, the weight of the case heavy in her hands. This wasn't just about D'Angelo. This wasn't just about Officer Donnelly. This was about exposing a system that didn't care, that swept issues like hers under the rug. And Ariel wasn't going to let them. She stood tall, took a deep breath, and walked toward the front of the room, ready to make her case. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. The final gavel had just fallen, and Ariel's heart still thudded in her chest, louder than the echo of the judge's voice. "The charge of obstruction is dismissed," Judge Keyes had said, his voice steady but laced with something unexpected. Concern, perhaps. Concern for the facts. Concern for the truth. Ariel stood still, her hands at her sides, her mind still processing the words. The weight of what had just happened was slow to settle in, but when it did, it hit her like a wave. She had done it. She had won. But it wasn't just a win for her. It was a victory for everyone who had been silenced, for every person who had been mistreated and ignored by the very system that was supposed to protect them. She didn't smile. She didn't jump up and celebrate. Ariel stood there, calm, like she'd been through hundreds of trials before. The truth, she realized, was never about the cheers, the applause, or the headlines. It was about the quiet satisfaction of knowing that the world had seen what was wrong, and now it could never be unseen. Officer Donnelly had been visibly shaken when the video played. His arrogant smirk had faded as the evidence crumbled his. Defense and the truth. Ariel's truth was laid bare for all to see. He tried to fight back, of course, but the facts didn't lie. The video footage, the inconsistencies in his reports, the witness testimonies, all of it proved what Ariel had known all along. He had crossed a line. He had abused his power, and now he had to face the consequences. But the most powerful part of the trial wasn't Donnelly's downfall. It was Ariel's rise. As the courtroom emptied, Ariel felt the eyes on her. There was a new weight to those gazes now, not one of judgment, but one of respect. A few of the teachers from Roosevelt High had stayed behind to watch the trial, and they came up to her, their faces soft with admiration. "You were incredible in there," one of them said. "You stood your ground like a pro." Ariel nodded quietly, her eyes scanning the room for her mother. Patrice stood near the back, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. When their eyes met, Ariel saw the relief on her mother's face, a relief she hadn't even realized was there until that moment. The proud smile on Patrice's face wasn't just for the victory. It was for the realization that her daughter had stepped into something bigger than herself and had emerged stronger for it. The reporters, the crowd, and even the police officers who had been observing the trial slowly began to drift out of the room. But one figure lingered at the back. It was D'Angelo, his mother, beside him. He walked up to Ariel, his usual bravado replaced by something deeper. Gratitude. "You killed it in there," D'Angelo whispered, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I didn't even know you could do all that." Ariel shrugged, but her eyes glistened with emotion. "I didn't either," she replied, her voice steady, though she could feel her heart swelling. "Not until I had to." D'Angelo's mom stepped forward, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Ariel," she said, her hands clasped in front of her. "You didn't just help D'Angelo, you helped all of us. You showed us that we don't have to be afraid to speak out, that we don't have to stay quiet when things aren't right." Ariel nodded, her throat tightening. "I'm just glad I could do something." And in that moment she realized that it wasn't just about the case. It wasn't even just about standing up to Officer Donnelly. It was about what her actions had sparked, what they had started. The students at Roosevelt High were already talking about her case, asking questions, questioning authority, asking what was right and wrong. They were challenging the status quo. They were changing the narrative. And that, more than anything, was her victory. The next few days were a whirlwind. Ariel received calls from lawyers, reporters, and even a few college recruiters. But she wasn't interested in the headlines or the offers. What mattered to her now was the feeling of walking through the halls of Roosevelt High and seeing the students who had once stayed silent now speaking out. What mattered was the knowledge that she had done something that would never be forgotten, not by her, not by D'Angelo, and not by the students who had watched her stand tall. One afternoon, Mr. Kirkwood called Ariel into his office. He handed her a folder, one she hadn't expected. "This came through for you," he said, his voice filled with pride. "It's a summer law program, Arizona State University. They take 20 students a year. Ariel's eyes widened as she opened the folder to see her name already printed on the acceptance letter. She felt a lump rise in her throat. It wasn't just a scholarship. It was the validation of everything she had worked for, everything she had fought for. "Thank you," she said softly, the words barely escaping her lips. "I don't know what to... Subisuasa, you don't have to say anything," Mr. Kirkwood said, smiling. "You've already said it all. You've already shown what it means to fight for what's right." As Ariel sat down that evening, the house quiet except for the rustle of papers in her hands, she finally let herself breathe. She had made it through the hardest thing she had ever faced. She had fought a corrupt system, and though the battle wasn't over, she had won this round. More than that, she had learned something about herself. That courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the ability to move forward in spite of it. She had stood up when others stayed silent. She had spoken out when others hid behind their fears. And now she knew that no matter where life took her next, she would always carry that strength with her. As she looked at the letter one last time, her fingers gently tracing the words, Ariel smiled. This was only the beginning. There was a long road ahead, and she was ready for whatever came next. Because Ariel Manning had learned one thing for certain. The truth is louder than any fear, and once you speak it, it echoes forever. And so the story of a teenager who defied the odds and challenged an unjust system became a story that would inspire generations. Ariel Manning, once a quiet student from Roosevelt High, had sparked a movement. And nothing, not even the world's harshest challenges, could stop her now.